Well, welcome everybody to our online program on addiction and recovery from the Sunshine Coast Health Center up here in Powell River, BC. And the topic this time is we're talking about popular works on addiction. Bestsellers, in fact. And last time we talked about David Sheff's book, Clean, and Sheff's idea that he learned from the University of California Medical Center that addiction was a brain disease. And this time I'll talk about Carl Hart. Now, Carl Hart is actually a neuroscientist. He's a brain scientist, and he's a professor at a big Ivy League university, Columbia. And his take on addiction is that, yeah, there's a physical effect on the brain, no question about that, but it doesn't hijack the brain, rendering the person powerless, because Hart says that addiction is a choice. And he gives an example, one of the studies that he's run. For example, gets a group of people who are cocaine addicts who have no interest in quitting, and then he gives them a choice. He said between the drug and some kind of monetary value, for example, cash or maybe a gift card or something like that. Anyway, he says that when he offers the addicts $1, that's the choice they get to make. So they can either take the cocaine or the dollar. So they pretty much all take the cocaine. At $5, if that's the option, he says about half of them will actually choose the $5. So that's kind of interesting. He said really the defining amount is $20. And he said 100% of the addicts will take the $20 rather than the cocaine. And based on this experiment and many, many others, he makes the argument that actually addiction is a choice. And it's based on rewards and punishment, which is sort of a branch of psychology we call behaviorism. It's the same part of the brain that drugs affect. So his solution is simply to offer people in recovery these choices. And he's a big fan of offering choices, for example, monetary compensation for clean drug tests, things like that. But he also mentions this interesting thing about punishing people. For example, he says medical doctors who are threatened with losing their licenses, we find a year later about 90% of them are still clean and sober. So that's kind of an interesting little wrinkle on it. So he also makes a statement that punishing people works. So it's this idea of reward and punishment, or the carrot and the stick, if you want to look at it that way. And he says this is scientifically valid and this is the way to treat people. So that's interesting. So we have a neuroscientist who agrees that drugs have this great effect on the brain, but it doesn't hijack the brain. It doesn't impair them. It doesn't impair their thinking. They're still capable of making intelligent decisions. In fact, he goes out of his way to talk about a research study that he had recently published, in which he reviewed cognitive impairment, or just like you're having trouble thinking, put it that way. And he did a major research review and discovered that this idea that drugs screw up your thinking is very much overstated. And this is really a key point for him. He said this is much more done on a faith-based rather than evidence-based, as he phrases it. Anyway, just another example, very different than David Sheff's book, Clean, that Carl Hart suggests that it is a choice. And next time we'll be back with our third example of a popular book on addiction.